जीवनम कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहम् श्रवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदाततं भुवि गृह्णन्ति ये भूरिदा जनाः. So we are discussing the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, the conversation that took place on 15 June 1883. So if you remember, if you recollect, we were discussing about Krishna Kishore, was a great devotee. Of course, Sri Ramakrishna liked him very much, but as was usual in those days, they were all very philosophical in their approach. But Krishna Kishore was slightly different. Though he liked to talk about philosophy, and sometimes Thakur used to make fun, Sri Ramakrishna used to make fun of his excessive desire to discuss philosophy, which he could not practice. So sometimes he made fun and he took it lightly. Krishna Kishore was not to be disturbed. But he praised Krishna Kishore wherever it was due. He said his faith is what is important. He has faith, of course, he has interest in philosophy, but he's a man of faith. And some orthodox customs or orthodox things, he did not care for those because his faith in God, the purifying power of God to forgive all these ritualistic lapses, was very strong in his mind. So he didn't mind if other people blamed him for some ritualistic mistakes or lapses or some things which he broke. In fact, he did not care so much for orthodoxy, but he was very particular and used to take literally all that Vedanta said, especially the Advaitic part. And Sri Ramakrishna's idea was that Vedanta as a theory, as a theology, as a philosophy is good. But if one cannot practice the tenets of Vedanta, Advait Vedanta to be specific, to the extent they should be, or if one is not strong enough to practice that, then he should follow the path of devotion or bhakti, which is another way of reaching the same goal, but a more gradual, more realistic, and a more practical way for people who lived in the world. So that conversation is going on now. And there were many conversations we have discussed in the previous class. So now Sri Ramakrishna is discussing the difference between yoga of jnana and yoga of bhakti. That is the difference between jnana yoga and bhakti yoga. So Sri Ramakrishna says, I am that pure Atman. This is the conviction of men of jnanis, that is, men of spiritual wisdom. On the other hand, devotees say it is all the manifestation of the glorious wealth of Bhagavan. So the outlook is different. The outlook can be different, and not only is different, it has to be different because the ultimate goal is the same. What Sri Ramakrishna wants to point out is, though the ultimate goal is same, since the starting point differs, and some people are capable of following a particular yoga, say Jnana Yoga, because they have already qualified themselves, and others are on a different level. They want a more gradual path to reach the goal, which is the same. There are no different goals as far as God is concerned, as far as realization of God is concerned. So he says, where there are no riches, Sri Ramakrishna says, how could you know a wealthy man? See, he's trying to explain the concept of Bhagavan, which according to Gyanis and according to Krishna Kishore also, was just not necessary. He says, if Atman is everything, then why should I pray to a Bhagavan who with so many powers? Bhagavan, the word Bhagavan means, which is how the common people refer to an avatara, Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna, Bhagavan Krishna, Bhagavan Buddha. Whenever you add Bhagavan, it implies that he is not an ordinary person. You don't call anyone Bhagavan. So Bhagavan means with the six supernatural powers, that is, which only avatars, avatara purushas possess. So ordinary jivas, no matter how spiritual they are, they don't possess this. So that's the idea. So Sri Ramakrishna explains it in a simple way. He says you should not just criticize this idea of Bhagavan. You may be a Jnani, according to Advaita Jnana, Advaita Vedanta. We don't need an avatara, we don't need it. By self effort, we can realize the grace of the Guru. The Guru, at the most, will teach you some Mahavakyas and you meditate on that, and you don't need a Bhagavan, separate Bhagavan, or a conception or a concept of avatara in the scheme of spiritual life to attain to the goal. But Sri Ramakrishna says, how do you know unless you say he has this much wealth? How do you define a billionaire or a millionaire? He has to have certain qualities. So just as you describe a wealthy man, you cannot know a wealthy man without knowing his wealth. If it's futile to say that this man is wealthy if you don't know how much wealth he possesses. Yet it is a different matter if God, because of devotion, we normally do not have the capacity to understand whether one is a Bhagwan or not, apart from his wealth. But it is a different matter if God, because of the devotion of an aspirant, says, "You are indeed the same as I." Before that, if I say I am the same as you, as Advait Vedanta would uh, say, they would say, what is the difference? I am a Jivatma, and the Avatara also is a soul. He has come, or maybe he has more powers. There are so many beings who have more power than me, but our background is the same Atman. But he says, if the God, if the Avatara himself, because of the devotion of an aspirant, he says, you are the same as I, and he comes down to your level. That is exactly what avatara means. Avatarana means to come down. So God willingly accepts a human form, though he does not need to, but just out of compassion. So Sri Ramakrishna is explaining this very tricky matter. He says if the king or the wealthy man himself says, you are indeed the same as I, then it is a different matter. Then he gives an example. Suppose on returning from the bazaar, a king's valet or a servant takes the king's seat and says, Sir, I am the same as you. People would think that the valet is crazy. How can you sit on your master's seat? But suppose, see, it's a very, very subtle idea Sri Ramakrishna is giving, explaining how avatars bestow their grace upon their devotees. He says, but suppose the king is so happy one day with his valet, with his service, that he says, okay, you come and sit beside me on the throne. Then it is acceptable. But if he sits on his own, it would be wrong. It will not be wrong if the king invites him. You are indeed the same as I. We can share this seat. Come. He is just happy. He wants to shower his grace upon you. If the valet then goes and sits beside the king, there is nothing wrong with it. It is not right for an ordinary man. So similarly, Sri Ramakrishna says it's not good for an ordinary man to say that he is the same as the Lord, is the same as the. I mean, that is what he's trying to explain. And then he says something very significant. This even Shankaracharya says, such a great Advaitin. He says the wave comes from water, not the water from the wave. So this is very important to understand that as waves, the avatara is a big wave, I may be a very small wave. Our background is same. So in that sense, the water is the same. The background of the smaller wave and the bigger wave is the water. But the wave comes, we can't say the water comes from the wave. However big that wave may be, if the wave says the whole water belongs to me, it is not true. But the wave comes from water, not water from the wave. So the fact is that, I mean, he goes further to explain Sri Ramakrishna. The fact is that unless your mind is steady, now we come to what we discussed in the morning, the Raj Yoga class. He says, whatever be the yoga you follow, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, or even Karma Yoga, The essence, Sri Ramakrishna points out. That is why Swami Vivekananda gave the name Raj Yoga, the king of yogas. So, mind control or yoga, which is defined as Chitta Vritti Nirodha, is the king of all yogas. Without that, there is neither bhakti nor jnana yoga. He says the fact is that unless your mind is steady or under control, there can be no yoga, neither whatever path you may take. So, Sri Ramakrishna also indirectly points out that the word Raj Yoga which Swamiji has used is justifying that. Of course, Swamiji used it much later than uh, the gospel was recorded. Maybe this was in his mind because Sri Ramakrishna clearly says the very definition of yoga, which is Chitta Vritti Nirodha, can be applied to Jnana Yoga or Bhakti Yoga. Bhakta's mind also should be controlled. Jnani's mind also should be controlled. The mind of a yogi is under his control. The yogi is not controlled by his mind. So that way it should not be. So control of mind, when the mind becomes steady, now he gives some signs. How do you know the mind is steady? When the mind becomes steady, breathing stops. And one experiences kumbhaka. Kumbhaka is a term which is used in uh, yoga. If you see Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, in pranayama it is there. When the commentators explain, of course, pranayama is explained in a very simple way by Patanjali because it is a sutra. But when Vyasa comments upon it, or Bhoja Vritti, if you find, they define these different stages. Rechaka, Puraka, Kumbhaka. Kumbhaka is that phase of pranayama where you hold the breath steady. So, if you see even animals, if the deer and especially tigers and cats, when they are focused on their prey, when they are about to attack, for some moment they just restrain. The infilling of breath and the outgoing of breath stops. So you reach a state, that is what Sri Ramakrishna is saying, because he has experienced samadhi. The breath stops. And in his case, it stopped for a very long time. He says, when the mind becomes steady, in obviously is referring to Raj Yoga, breathing stops. When one is doing pranayama or one is focusing on some object, when mind is very concentrated, as you see in the animals, when they are just about to attack, they are so focused that automatically the breath stops. That stage is known as Kumbhaka. So Puraka and Rechaka. Puraka is filling of air in the lungs. Rechaka is taking it out. But Kumbhaka is the middle stage where you restrain the breath. So the same Kumbhaka which is experienced in meditation is experienced in Bhakti Yoga also. That he is now showing, Sri Ramakrishna, that control of the mind, irrespective of the yoga that you follow, objects may be different. Bhakti Yoga, you are meditating on the Ishta. But the concentration is the same. Whether you concentrate, Patanjali says you don't need any particular object. You can meditate on a point, you can meditate on a flame. That is a atheistic Raj Yoga. They call it Nirishwara. Means you don't need the concept. Yoga is so scientific. There are two types of yoga based on two types of philosophies of Sankhya, which is the basis of yoga. Patanjali's yoga is it bases its entire philosophy on the Sankhya philosophy. So Sankhya also is divided into two: Seshwara, Nirishwara. So one group of Sankhya philosophers say we don't need Sankhya explains everything scientifically. You don't need an Ishvara to explain. Whereas some people say no, Ishvara helps. The concept of Ishvara, concept of Bhagavan, concept of Avatara, God, this theistic approach also helps. So Sankhya is divided, yoga also is divided. So, but Sri Ramakrishna is combining both. He says if you are just a Raj Yogi who doesn't believe in God, but following the path of devotion, if you are really devoted and focused on the deity, whichever form he takes, that God or Ishta, you experience the same Kumbhaka. That means the goal of Raj Yoga and goal of Bhakti Yoga is same. Then he gives an example. This example is taken from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's, who are obviously Chaitanya Mahaprabhu started as a Advaitin or as a Pandit of logic. In fact, he wrote one of the best books on logic. It would have become an immortal work. But logic, he felt too dry, and because of his friend, his compassion towards his friend, who thought this book is so nice that his book will not be valued. So, just out of compassion, because he was full of compassion, he threw his entire work into the river. And this Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was a great follower of Advaita, becomes a great bhakta because there is hardly any difference. So, in his life, this incident comes. As one repeats, it is there in Bengali, but the English translation will not give a very clear picture. My Nita is like a mad elephant. My Nita means Nityananda. Is like a mad elephant. One is filled with a deep spiritual mood. So this is the idea. In Bengali, they say, I forgot the name. Hati is the word for elephant. Matta hati. So when the spiritual emotion arises, they feel as if they are. Have you? I mean, obviously you have heard of a mad elephant. When it becomes mad, it just tears down anything, and the mouth also, it can crush everything on its way. So sometimes some of the bhaktas, when they are excessive, they become excessively emotional. They don't know what they are doing. They go into a trance, they sing, and then they go into a tremendous ecstasy. If you see the gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, most of the devotees who used to come, when Thakur sang these wonderful songs of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they used to literally go into this deep bhava or ecstasy. And Gyanis like Narayan used to feel, oh, I don't get this. These people may be far superior. But Sri Ramakrishna, of course, tells him that is not the case, just having this kind of deep spiritual mood. But he says, even those people, they cannot, they start with this sentence, my Nitai is like a mad elephant. That means they are so much overwhelmed with the devotion or bhava that they feel that their state is like a mad elephant. But later on, even that they cannot utter. That means the mind becomes slowly, due to emotion, it becomes focused on God so much that they say, one says just elephant, hati, hati. The word hati is enough to put them into deep ecstasy. Then after that, one is only able to say Eli, Ha. So just the utterance of the word Ha reminds them of Matta Hati. Matta means mad elephant. So that symbolic way of saying that once you are have reached a certain level of concentration, even the slightest suggestion will take you into samadhi. For example, I'll give you an example. Sri Ramakrishna was taken to visit the zoo. So in the zoo, of course, you will find animals, but he could not be taken far. I mean, after seeing the elephant, after seeing the lion, he was immediately reminded because day and night he was thinking of Mother Durga. Say, he was thinking of Mother Durga, whose Vahana is the elephant. It has nothing to do with Durga. He is not seeing Durga in front of him. But the very fact that Mother Durga and lion are associated, it is the Vahana, the carries Mother Durga. The seeing of lion in the cage reminded him of Mother Durga, and he went into deep ecstasy. Then they thought now it is impossible to take him and to see all the animals because he will have so many visions. So then that was the last thing he did. So also this idea that when he says when you the mind becomes steady, either focused on an object, your Ishta Devata, or some idea of Advaita Vedanta, whatever path you follow, when mind becomes concentrated, or you follow the path of Raj Yoga, where you just meditate on a point or a flame, every time the experience is the same. You cannot continue. That bhava stops and you experience kumbhaka. Kumbhaka means retaining of breath. Breath is suspended. So he repeats again, in the state of bhava, if it is a real bhava, it is not just an emotional outburst, then breathing is suspended and one experiences kumbhaka. Now, suppose he gives another example. So many wonderful ways of explaining the same thing. Suppose someone is sweeping the floor with a broom, and another person comes and tells him, "Brother, so and so is no more." Means he announces the death of somebody who is dear. He is dead. If the dead person, whoever he is not related to him, the man with the broom goes on sweeping and says casually, "Oh, is it so?" And he just is not bothered because that attachment or mamatva is not there. That feeling that somebody whom I think is mine has not died. So if it's okay, somebody is dead, so what? Alas, alas, of course he will express some regret and say, oh yes, maybe he has dead, he's died. The poor fellow is dead. He was such a good man. At the most, he may say in a casual way, "Oh, yes, yes, he was such a good man." And he goes on sweeping and doing his work. But if the deceased had been a near and dear one, the broom would have fallen from his hand and he would have sat down and cried, exclaiming, he would have cried, just exclaiming in uh, expressing his sorrow. His breathing would have stopped and he would not be able to think of the work he was doing. So he says, see the difference. If you are just uttering the name without reaching that state of concentration, that state of kumbhaka where breathing is stopped, that means you are repeating the name, you are singing the devotional song, but you don't have that kind of bhava. You have not reached that state. So just as Nitai Amar Matto Hathi, the Nita is my mad elephant. So that is how they uh, figuratively try to imagine that my state is like a Nitai, means Nityananda, the companion of Chaitanya. He is, see how he has gone into ecstasy because of the divine name. So that is their expression, their way of comparing an ecstatic person with the mad elephant. But when the ecstasy becomes deeper, this is superficial. That is why Swamiji told Naren, you don't worry that Bhavanath and all this Choto Naren and all, they were just rolling in emotion. When very deeply emotional songs were being sung, he thought, see, they are going into ecstasy. They are so devotional, so they're expressing their emotion. Sri Ramakrishna said, you don't worry because they're expressing a feeling doesn't mean it is deep. When the feeling is really deep, kumbhaka happens. So that is how Sri Ramakrishna is saying, you can test an emotion. If it is just a surface emotion, the breathing will not stop. So whether it is the case of Raj Yoga, whether it is Jnana Yoga, if you see somebody whose breath is suspended for when he is meditating or when he is praying or when if he's singing, all of a sudden he goes into that kumbhaka state, just as when somebody whose deer dies, the broom will stop. He can't continue. He can't be superficially affected by that. That emotion is so deep. Oh, my relative has died or my friend has died. So you will just get a shock and it's just like a kumbhaka state will naturally come to you. He says his breathing would have stopped and he wouldn't be able to think of the work he was doing, like sweeping. Don't you see this with women? One of them stands still, amazed at seeing something or hearing some news, and the other women say to her, I say you have gone into bhava. Here too, the breathing has stopped. I mean, he's referring to women because normally it is, uh, at least people think that women are more emotional than men. Men are not so easily, they do not become so emotional. That's why perhaps he says that. He says, don't you see it happens with women? They are very much emotional. So they are amazed by some wonderful thought or a wonderful song, something which is going on. Men take some time to, that is why Thakur used to sometimes make fun of Master Mashe, who was a dry person. Though he was inside, he was deeply emotional, but he had controlled his emotion. Then, when Kirtan was going on, Thakur himself was dancing in emotion, and all the youngsters joined. Master Masha was hardly 29. He was not. He was still a youngster. But compared to Naren and all, he was slightly older than them. He was already having a job. Then Thakur pointed out to Master, see, he is become old, that is why he is not able to dance, he is not getting emotional. The idea is that inside he may be emotional, but he tries to control it. So that is why he says some of the women who easily become emotional, in a general way, he says, not that he is referring to every woman. He says the other women say to her, see, I say you have gone into bhava, you have just become so much deeply moved that you have just become quiet. Here too, Sri Ramakrishna says, breathing has stopped. That is why she has become speechless. Suddenly, some shocking news is given, good or bad, or some good news also sometimes creates that feeling. Excessive emotion comes and then your breathing stops. So here, Sri Ramakrishna is showing that whether you follow Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Raj Yoga, all the yogas, there is one common sign that when the attention concentration becomes intense, kumbhaka is a natural state of your breathing. You are not neither able, because your breathing has to stop. Has to stop in the sense pause for some time. In Thakur's case, it was a samadhi which continued for a very long time, which Dr. Sarkar was not able to decipher. He even tried to see how can it be possible for such a long time. For others, maybe it is an occasional thing. Breath is suspended and then slowly they return back to normal when the bhava goes away. But if it is very deep, as in the case of Sri Ramakrishna, they would be in that kumbhaka state for a longer time. The kumbhaka gets extended, you become breathless, I mean, you don't breathe, and you enter into samadhi. So now he is explaining how these things happen in the case of a jnani. In the case of bhakta, he has said that when you are deep, uh, struck by deep emotion, by some song or some dancing, kirtan, these were actually the tools that, not tools, the methods that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this Sankirtan, the whole idea of group Sankirtan is to create that kind of meditative awareness. You see, they used bhakti. They knew if a person is asked to sit and meditate, he may not be able to do it. So, how to do it in a congregation? That's why Kirtan is for congregation. And many people, even today, they like it. Kirtan is appreciated by the common people more than uh, the serious people, Gyanis and meditative people who prefer to be alone. They feel in the group they get disturbed. But for many, in fact, this kirtan is a way where you naturally. So Sri Krishna is trying to support this. That don't worry through emotion also, because that is also a faculty of the mind. The goal is to focus your mind in such a way that you enter the state of kumbhaka. Now he says, how do you identify? This is as far as bhakti is concerned, emotion is concerned. But how do you identify the status of a jnani? He says, marks of a jnani, and he is describing two words which are from the scriptures, but sadhana siddha and nitya siddha. So sadhana siddha literally means one who is perfected after a lot of devotional practices. Sadhana can mean devotional practices, can also mean practices of a jnani. And Nitya Siddha means one who is born perfect. He's already done his sadhana maybe in the previous birth. So he's trying to explain the difference. He says, what are the marks? How do you distinguish between these two people? It doesn't help because now the person who is listening is Krishna Kishore. He is still there. So he just wants to politely tell him that though you like Advaita, though you like philosophy, you may not you may not have the characteristics of a jnani. So how to see the marks of a jnani in a person? And he could see it in Narendra. That is why he said, you do Advait sadhana, you don't do. In fact, he used to get angry if somebody forced Advaitic ideas like Hajra on Rakhal and all the people with devotional temperament. He said, no, no, don't spoil their mood. So who are the people who can be Gyanis? Now here Sri Ramakrishna is using his own way of examining. Now, it is difficult, there is no logic behind all what he's saying because these are intuitional. He says it doesn't help just to repeat Soham. I am that, I am that. You may repeat, but if you don't really know the true meaning, then it will not be useful to you. That means if you are not fit, Adhikari for Advaita, then Soham, just repeating Soham as Krishna Kishore would have done, it will not be of any benefit. Then he says there are marks of a Jnani, which he saw in Naren. See, Naren's eyes protrude. I mean, they are just protruding out. I don't know. He could read. There are many people whose eyes protrude, but they may not be Gyanis. But anyway, he says, see, Naren's eyes are protruding. His eyes and forehead also, he could read. He was an expert in reading people and personalities. So he said the forehead, his eyes and forehead have good marks. Besides, he says everybody is not at the same level as Narendra. There are four classes of human beings. Again, he is classifying the Baddha Jivas, the bound ones, the Mumukshu, those who seek liberation. They desire, but they have not liberated, they seek. The Mukta, who is already liberated, who is already free, and the Nitya Jivas, that is Nitya Muktas, ever free. It is not that all these people have to take to sadhana, spiritual practice. There are Nitya Siddhas, ever perfect, and sadhana Siddhas, who have done sadhana for a long time and then attained perfection. Some were born perfect. So he's just saying that in this creation, you will find sadhakas at different levels. And for each one of them, there is a different sadhana. So you can't fit one coat to everyone. Everybody's size is different. Then he says some people attain the Lord after practicing a great deal of sadhana, while others are perfect from their birth. For example, Prahlada. The Homa bird is another favorite example he gives. Uh, he says whether this is literally a bird which exists, we do not know. But Sri Ramakrishna says, Vede Ache, it is there in the Vedas. So maybe the word Homa comes somewhere. He says the Homa Pakhi, the Homa bird, lives high up in the sky. It's a mythical bird, but it conveys an idea. He says when it lays its egg, it falls towards the earth, they say. So when it lays an egg, it flies very, very high that even during the fall, the egg breaks and a chick emerges. Even then it goes on falling because of gravity. But it is still so high up that it develops its wings during its fall. When it is close to the earth, the chick realizes that if it hits the earth, it will be crushed. At once it shoots upward and towards his mother, uttering, Mother, Mother, where are you? So he is explaining that these there are various varieties of people. Some are born, some attain greatness or some attain siddhi. Others are born, they are nitya siddhas, they are ever free. They don't have to do sadhana in any birth. They come every time they come with the to do the leela of the avatara along with the avatar. They are nitya siddhas like Prahlada, who may or may not practice sadhana in later life, but they to teach the people they still practice. You see, this is a very important thing. Sri Ramakrishna did obviously didn't need to practice all these sadhanas, but to give authenticity to different spiritual practices, they practice. They have already attained the Lord before the practice of sadhana. This is in his case, or Nitya Siddhas. It is like the bottle or gourd or the pumpkin which fruits before it flowers. So, looking at Rakhal's father, now he looks at Rakhal's father who is also there. And he doesn't say that Rakhal is born in an ordinary family, but his father must have got this hint. In Nitya Siddha, he says, even if he is born in a lower family, does not become less spiritual than he was. So he's indirectly giving a hint. If you remember, if you uh, classes before, we discussed when he said Balram's family is very noble because everybody in the family is equally spiritual or he is spiritual. He says, I see only one or two families like that. So, so he says, but that doesn't mean that people have to be born only in uh, families like Balram Bose's family. There may be other families where people may be most ordinary. So he gives an example. He says, in Nitya Siddha, if he is ever born in even a lower family, perhaps Rakal's father must have got a hint. We know Rakal's father, Brahmananda's father, came to actually take him away just to see where is my son going. He was very worldly minded. In fact, he had married twice. Second time he had married and he had come to Thakur just to see what is his son of his previous marriage, obviously. So what he was doing here. So he was afraid. So he came with that intention, not but when he saw the only thing that allowed him to allow only thing that convinced him to allow his son to visit was that lot of important people used to visit. His attention was not on Sri Ramakrishna or what he taught and other things. He was more happy. He was happy that, oh, people, great people of Calcutta come here. And if my son comes here, maybe he'll develop his contacts. That's how worldly people think. In a group of important people, it's good to have no influential people. With that attitude, he somehow compromised. That means he was not spiritually inclined, but at the same time, he did not prevent like other parents of other direct disciples. Trigunatitanji's parents practically locked him up, saying that we'll not allow. They were afraid that he would become a monk. So they locked him up and they treated him so badly. Whereas here, though, but still Sri Ramakrishna gives a hint that it doesn't mean Rakhal has to be born in a good family. He says, even if he is born in a lower family, he does not become less spiritual than what he really is. Because he is a Nitya Siddha, he can be born anywhere. The gram seed, even if it falls on a dung heap, still sprouts into a gram plant. It won't, because it has fallen somewhere in a dirty place, the quality of gram will be the same. It will take whatever nutrition it wants and it will grow. So then he is saying, why then you see all these differences? Why are some born as Nitya Siddhas? Why some have to struggle? And why some are Baddha Jivas? They don't even bother to be free. So this same conversation is going on. Vidyasagar and special manifestation of power in some, and the deficiencies of mere learning. So Sri Ramakrishna is still continuing. He is trying to explain why God has created different levels of people. God has granted more power to some than to others. In one, there is the light of a single earthen lamp, while in other, it is like a blazing torch. I recognized Vidyasagar's limit of intelligence from one of his remarks. So he had heard, you see, that was the greatness of Sri Ramakrishna. Wherever he heard, he's a good musician, a good scholar, a noble person. So he used to tell Hriday, please take me, I want to see. He was a learner all his life. So he used to learn from different people. And he learnt his lessons in a very natural way. He had heard a lot about Vidyasagar, but he says, I judged him by one stupid statement that he made. That is what he's saying. I could judge him. I could recognize the limits of Vidyasagar. Though he's a great scholar recognized by the whole community. In those days, Vidyasagar was somebody who was very great, considered to be one of the most learned people. But so Sri Ramakrishna, you see, he has gone there just out of curiosity and also his great desire to see great people. So he said, from one statement of his, I could know how much intelligent he was. What did he say? When I told him that there was a special, he was honestly telling him that you have a special manifestation of God's power in not only in him, in some. God is gracious to some, he gives, but Vidyasagar, being a very democratic type of person, he held, as modern Westerners believed, that everybody is born equal. Though they don't fully believe it, in the same family we see no two people are equal. But still, just to please everyone, they say all are born equal, but some develop that develop themselves in such a way that they become better than others. That is how Western, uh, it is a kind of politely refusing to compare. That is how you become good mannered and also. Vidyasagar sir, why do you mean? I told him there was a special manifestation of God's power in some. Vidyasagar told me, Sir, do you mean that he has granted more power to one and less to another? Means he didn't believe in that. He said, I don't hold that view. So do you mean to say somebody, God is partial, he gives more power? Then immediately Sri Ramakrishna replied. I immediately replied to him, Indeed it is so. Had there not been more power in one and less in another, why would you have become famous? You see his logic. It is when I heard of your learning, of your charitable disposition, and so forth, that I came to see you. Of course, why did I come to see you? You have not grown two horns that you are different from other people. I came to see you because of your nobility of character and the generous disposition you have, your learning, and all those things. So learned, so famous is Vidyasagar, but he is said something so childish. This is, according to Sri Ramakrishna, a very childish statement. He is asking me, has he granted more power to one than less to another? You know how it is? Then he gives another example. You see the chain of examples Sri Ramakrishna is giving. He says, you know how it is? The bigger fish, like trout, and the carp are the first to get caught in the net. The fisherman stirs the mud with his feet, and minnows and mudfish and smaller fish emerge and they get caught in no time. If one has not realized the Lord, minnow and mudfish come out of him. What does mere learning avail one? That means if he doesn't have the highest knowledge, all these silly things will come out, smaller things. He may be considered as a big trout or a big fish, but somehow, if a little shaking or a little questioning, which Sri Ramakrishna did, it exposes the limits of his knowledge. That is what he says. What does mere learning or mere scholarship avail? So Sri Ramakrishna, though he never went to a university, he could judge people with his sharp logic. That is why Girish Chandra Ghosh or Swami Vivekananda himself, Girish mentioned it many times. Swami Vivekananda said, when he said, I sometimes wonder at some of the statements of my master. The problems that made me spend hundreds of hours studying all these great Western philosophers to solve all the different philosophies of life, like free will, whether there is a free will or there is a fate. All these things are discussed in Western philosophy. So he says, being a student of philosophy, I spent hours and hours reading and trying to come to conclusion, quarreling, arguing with people, and yet not coming to conclusions. But he said, one teaching and one example of the master solved my problem. Then Swami Shardanji was there, who was also educated in a Western university. So he said, can you give me an example? Then it seems, it is there in Swami Vivekananda's biography. So Naren said, I'll give you one example. And they discussed it for almost 2-3 days. I can discuss this how Sri Ramakrishna solved a very, very complicated philosophical problem. And I can explain to you how it is as good as discussing philosophy for 2-3 days. I can give you the importance and significance of the simple example or parable of Sri Ramakrishna. So then he gave the example of, which obviously is there in the gospel, of what is fate and what is predestination, or that is fate, and one's own willpower, free will. It's an eternal question in Western philosophy. Does man have a free will? If he has, why is he not able to exercise it? Or does he have, he's predestined to think the way he does? He's predestined to practice spirituality. He's predestined to follow the spiritual path. If everything is free will, if everything is predestined, then there is no free will. So to take the side of one, it was a fashion in those days. Western scholars, especially Narayan and all, they were studying philosophy in college. So naturally, they will quote one person, they will quote another scholar. He says, no, he says, this scholar says he has proved in this book that there is only free will. What you say, predestination, is nothing but free will expressed in another form. Another person will say, no matter what a person does, it is predestination, fate. So, how to reconcile whether free will is what is true in to explain the workings of the day-to-day life, or is it uh, predestination? Whether there is no free will at all, if it's all God's will or fate, whatever you may call. Then Naren says, see, Sri Ramakrishna has solved this problem so beautifully without going into any logic or. He says, he gave the example of a cow who has a 10 meter or 10 feet rope tied to a some kind of pole. And he's allowed to graze. He's tied in such a way that he's allowed to graze all the grass in that 10 feet radius. That is like free will. He has the free will to eat whatever grass he wants. But when you go beyond that limit, the rope will not allow him to go. Then, if the owner or the of the cow wants, he can loosen the rope a little bit, say from 10 feet to 20 feet, and say, now, since you have finished, you can explore more areas. So that he says free will and uh, predestination or fate is similar. You can't say it is fate because it his will was free. The cow's will was free. Uh, it was free to the extent that the rope allowed him. So 10 feet he could eat. But beyond a certain limit, that means when the law of karma is such that beyond that your free will doesn't cease to exist. Then fate comes. But with God's grace, even that free will can be changed. That is why Holy Mother said, by the power of japa, you can't negate karma, but it can be reduced. If you have fully utilized the powers that God has given you, like the cow, he has finished, the cow, she has finished eating the grass. Then you can go. It said, I have done my best. I have done all the spiritual practices. Now you shower your grace. So then predestination or fate or grace of God comes into picture. But if you say, I will not do anything, you do everything, it's like the cow saying, no, no, you just increase the limit of the rope. I want 20 feet right from the beginning. God's not going to give you that. That's the idea. So in this, he tries to convey or express. Swami Vivekananda says, this is how Sri Ramakrishna solved all the problems. Obviously, to understand this, Swami Vivekananda they used to discuss a lot. So he said, he used to spend hours and hours. He said, this one parable I can discuss for 3 days with you. How Sri Ramakrishna, giving examples from Western philosophers. He said, see how Sri Ramakrishna has solved this problem, that problem, quoting from different scriptures, because he had knowledge, intimate knowledge of Western philosophical systems also, and also Shastras. So what Shastras say? So Sri Ramakrishna, he found, though he never went to any college or any modern system of education, he was so logical. Even when he spoke ordinary conversations, you will in ordinary conversations, say very casual statement made by Vidyasagar. He was he totally understood that this man claims to be a scholar, but see, he is making such a foolish statement. I came to know, he says, that The fallacy of the idea that all people are equal. How can it they be equal? You can see in front of your eyes people have different capacities. Similarly, there are so many other examples Sri Ramakrishna uh, used to give. Naren, for example. In those days, there was a fad, criticizing everything Indian, especially the faith of innocent devotees, whom uh, people thought was superstition, idol worship, doing prayers, vigils. They said, no, you have to be Gyanis, you have to follow a rational path, influenced by Western scholarship. So there was a tendency to ridicule everything. So they invented some stupid words which Sri Ramakrishna just demolished. Naren, following that tendency, they invented, I mean, the Western scholars invented that Indians are just, or superstitious people are having blind faith. Should have faith after lot of rationalization. And this was obviously the tendency was to accept whatever was taught in the college. So Naren goes and tells Sri Ramakrishna because he was basically a Brahmo before he came. So he also believed, like the Brahmos believed, we should not bow down before the image. It is superstition. It is blind faith to just go and bow before an image. So he even scolded Rakhal once. Said, why you are breaking the rule? You have taken an oath, you will not bow down before an image, which they thought is a blind faith. So he goes and tries to argue with Sri Ramakrishna. He said, in one course of a conversation, he says, should we not discourage blind faith? So Sri Ramakrishna said, what did you say? Andha Vishwas, that is the idea. It is a very commonly used term without knowing what it means. So Sri Ramakrishna said, just what did you say? He said, blind faith, Andha Vishwas. Should we not discourage? We should have Vishwas, we should have faith, but not a blind faith. Then Sri Ramakrishna corrected him. He said, how foolish you are. What logic is, do you do you mean to say faith? There are two types of faith. One faith which is blind, another is with eyes. Either say it is faith or say it is knowledge. If it has eyes, that means the eyes have opened. You know reality, then there is no need for faith. This faith is always blind because faith is something you are trying to know, you are not sure of. You pray to God, you pray to Mother, like Thakur did, Sri Ramakrishna did, hoping that because he has faith, blind faith, it has to be blind because he has not realized. He knows Mother will reveal herself to a sincere aspirant. He has faith. It is blind faith. So he corrected, don't say blind faith or faith with eyes. I've never heard of faith with eyes. Faith with eyes merely means knowledge. If there is knowledge, then there is no need for faith. If you are seeing something, you don't need to tell that person, can you see this is milk? I can have faith that there is milk in this room because it is meant to keep milk. Or, for example, is to say, you go to a stable and say, I expect to find horses there. That is blind faith. You have not seen. But if you have really gone and seen the horses, then you don't need and expect somebody to have faith. So that's the idea. So we will now continue. This is a new chapter. I don't think we have time. Do we have? If there are questions, you can just answer. So we are running. It's almost 5:30, is it? Yeah. Because this chapter is ending now, so we will be discussing the next section, which is Sri Ramakrishna is in the Kali temple at Dakshineshwar. So the type of sadhana which is necessary for this age, that is being discussed. And because it was Wednesday, very few devotees have come. Normally, most of the conversations in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna will find on the Sundays. That is when M got leave from his school, and that is when he recorded. But on public holidays, and this was one of them, this recording was done on a Wednesday. And in the afternoon, whenever M got a chance, as I said, he was a very busy professor or the principal of Morton College. So, but the attraction to go to Dakshineshwar was so much that whenever he got leave, he would invariably visit. So, and Sri Ramakrishna had told him that uh, make the most of the opportunity you get, and otherwise, if you wait for opportunities to come, then it is not possible. So, you will see whenever he got a chance, whether it was Wednesday, a holiday, once he knew that there is a holiday, he would visit. No matter if devotees, fewer devotees were there on Wednesday, since in that day it was a holiday for M, but it was a working day for many people, so less people were there. And but still, Sri Ramakrishna Naren was there because he was a student. So Swami Vivekananda was there, and uh, he still having strange ideas about idol worship because he was a follower of Brahmo Samaj. So this idea of Narendranath in his initial days that just idol worship and all these things are a result of superstition was still there. So there are many things which will be discussed in this section. If there are some questions, yes.
Stay with practice japa meditation, or is it something that some have and some don't? How does one become deeply devotional?
Yeah, so we were.
There's a continuation.
Okay, continue.
So with my free will, I can choose to do my spiritual practices, japa and meditation, and God will allow me more growth.
Yes.
But unless I apply efforts, I will remain within the boundaries of a short life.
Sure, sure. Yes, exactly, exactly. Yes, yes, surely. So you have got the point. Whoever asked this question, the question is, yeah. Anyway, it's a very good question because we were discussing whether there is free will and whether or there is predestination or fate. We call it fate, bhagya. In India, it is known as bhagya, fate. So we'll attribute everything to fate. Oh, it was not fated to be like this, so I just reconcile to it. Another or a group of people will say, no, it is free will. I can decide what I want to become. So free will has to be exerted. So there was a clash. I mean, there is always a clash between people who believe in free will and Narendranath, because he was a student of philosophy, he would argue with his friends, as I told, who held either of these two ideas. Some people quoted some Western philosophers who said human will is free. He can do whatever he wants. There's another section of people, though they may not be religious, but they were philosophers. They would say, no, there is no free will. It is all fate. No matter how much you assert your free will. So this is hotly contested, and Sri Ramakrishna solves it. How we solved it by giving the example of the cow who has a limited rope, 10 feet rope, and he is free within the perimeter or within that 10-meter radius or 10 feet radius. But if he finishes his job, I mean, if the cow eats the grass that it is allowed to graze, then the Lord may, or the master, or the owner of the cow may lengthen the rope so that it gets a bigger radius. So, similarly, the question that is being asked, one of the devotees have asked, is when we do spiritual practices, is the same example true? Because we have a free will to do as much of spiritual practices as we can. But if we have not exerted ourselves to the full, then we don't get God's grace. That, I think, is the question that is asked. It's absolutely true. So the word that is used in Hindu scriptures is Purushartha. Purushartha means free will. So every child is told that you have a free will which you have to exert. You have to exert a free will even to pass an exam. But that doesn't guarantee that you will pass. When you don't get the necessary marks, then perhaps the parents will tell him, oh, it is destiny. You just forget it. It has happened. So, in a way, it is true. And the child who is obviously seeking answers, he says, tell me whether it is free will or destiny. If it was destiny all along, then why did I study? Why did I exert myself? Similar question, that is the question the devotee is asking, that if you don't practice and then blame God that I have been doing this, doing that, I'm not seeing any results, that means you have not exhausted the limit of the rope that has been given to you. It is as plain as that. It is applicable for everything, whether it is passing an exam or whether it is uh, achieving something in the spiritual life. So, what you asked or what you asked is absolutely true. If you have exerted yourself to your maximum, only then God's grace will enable you, or He will allow you to do much higher sadhana or more spiritual practice, provided you have already done whatever you could, exerting your free will. So it is exactly applicable. So is there any counter question? So it's applicable to all our endeavors, all whatever we do in life. This rule, and Naren says what university professors could not explain, about which we were debating in our colleges, asking professors, and everybody was giving either an answer based on one philosopher, and they will say, no, it is all free will. Others will say, no, it is all destiny. It was a very hot issue. Nowadays, nobody bothers about all these things. But in those days, when debates were held in the colleges, this was a very serious issue. And people used to debate, and especially because of the English system of education, it was new to the young uh, generation of those days. So Narendranath, they were all fascinated. They thought something great has come to the West, and they have come just to save India from absolute utter ignorance. And they needed an ignorant person who never went to school to teach them that your logic is fallacious and offer solutions which they would not have dreamt of. And that was appreciated by Narendra. He said, my master never went to school, but he was more learned than all the university professors put together. Because what I was taught in school, I wish I had not learned that. I found it was so incomplete or incompetent. I felt myself so incompetent before my master, who went to a university which was nature herself. He learnt everything from nature, from Prakriti. He did not bother to acquire second-hand knowledge. That is the word he uses. He was very harsh when some people made fun of the illiteracy of Sri Ramakrishna. So he said, you people think you are learned, you just memorize certain uh, ideas and from people. These are not your ideas. You have studied books. That is how the modern education system has trained you. And you just memorize a few philosophers of the West who don't even understand what they are talking. Each one is trying to prove a point. When they quarrel, they leave the discussion inconclusive, and then you memorize all that, write an exam, get a degree, and you consider yourself. If I felt like a fool when I went before my master. I had a university degree in my hand, and I felt that how foolish I was when my master told me, you are asking a stupid question. You are saying what andhashraddha or blind faith. What is blind faith? He says faith is faith. There's faith. You can't say this faith is blind faith. This is faith with eyes. It has eyes. Faith doesn't have eyes. If it is faith, it has to be blind. There's no. It's just a contradictory fact to use this language. So see how logical he was. He said either say faith or knowledge. If you have knowledge, you know a thing for sure. But if you have faith in a person or faith in something, that means you still don't know, but you still have faith. So faith has to be blind. So that one incident, or there were several such occasions when Sri Ramakrishna just, whether it was Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar or Swami Vivekananda himself, he understood that in front of my master, Sri Ramakrishna, all my university learning and degrees, they look like childish knowledge. So that is true. Yeah.
Reassure her.
Hmm.
So can I experience deep devotion with practice?
Yes, yes. Obviously, there is no end. See, when you say free will, you have to exert a free will. For example, let me give a very concrete example. If a student says, I have done my best, I have studied day and night, that means he has exerted his free will. He had the will, he could have chosen to do something else, but he has given up everything, all his other activities, and focused on the exam, and he has appeared for the exam. And then he says, I have done my best, but whether I pass or fail or get good marks, I leave to fate. So, similarly, if you exert more, there is no limit. You may say you have exerted to your uh, I mean, exerted so much that you have done your best. But there may be other people who think that you have not done your best. You could have done still better. So it is something, a very relative thing to ask whether God's grace or yeah, a deep devotion will come to you at a particular stage. So as I said, Sri Ramakrishna also says we are at different levels of evolution. So from the point you start, he says some are nitya siddhas, like they have perhaps the advantage of already having devotion in their personality. So they don't have to work hard. You can't compare. That is why Jesus said, judge not that ye be not judged. You don't judge other people. Some work less hard, but we do not realize that they are born with certain talents. They are born unequal. All are born unequal. That is another important point that Vidyasagar mentioned, and Sri Ramakrishna told him, how can you say all are equal when you see discrepancies? Some are devoted, some are very worldly, some don't have faith, some have faith. Why so many people? Same brothers, two brothers don't agree with each other. They have different talents, different capacities. He said, do you need more reasoning than this? How can you say and make a offhand remark like this that all are equal? It's nice for a person, but Sri Krishna would not be fooled by this. He said, you have to accept truth. So as the question, yeah, still something is there? Ah,
Stephen, Ramakrishna mentions Sufism is part of sadhana preceding Christian sadhana.
no, no, we will, no, I don't agree with that. And this is entirely a different topic, not related to what we discussed. When we come to that particular idea of Sufi, then you have to go into what Sufism is, what Christianity is, and the various interpretation of Sufi and Islam. So it if somebody has said that, uh, maybe it is a debatable thing. Yeah. What is the question? What does he say?
Part of sadhana preceding Christian sadhana.
I don't think so. If you please send me a reference where it is, because we have to see the context. So I don't think Sri Ramakrishna has ever compared Sufism with Christianity. I don't think so. He has said one general thing that whatever be the path, if you are sincere, you will reach the goal. That of course. But what precedes what and all those things, I don't think he has ever made such comments. Yeah. If you have found such a passage, please, with reference, you please message us. I'll try to reply. If you are on WhatsApp or maybe on YouTube, you can ask this question or give the reference on YouTube where you have asked the question. I'll just see our channel, and if you have an exact reference, please give the name, page number of the gospel or whichever text where you have read this. Okay? So, shall we conclude? One more. Okay. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna